Okay, let's talk about Man's Search for Meaning, page 90 through 120. So, in page 67, Frankl explains the necessity of suffering. So, he explains that suffering is an essential part of our life, such as fate and death. And without suffering, we can't really learn lessons. And without suffering, human life would not be complete. So I asked you guys whether you agree with the statement, whether suffering is an essential part of life, or we should avoid suffering as much as possible. Um, so it's very natural for us to wish to live a life without suffering, but then we have to admit that if we go through suffering, we can be transformed and then we can definitely grow through that experience. Uh, so because of this experience at the concentration camp, the doctor, the author of the book, was able to develop his theory of logotherapy, and he was able to became a very distinguished doctor in his field. So his academic depth and also his mental depth and spiritual depth also grew through this experience. And if we live a life without any pain, we might end up with a very shallow and superficial personality because the depth of a person, I believe, is related with the how empathetic we can be when we see other people suffering, how we can put ourselves into that person's shoes and how we can think from that person's perspective. But then if we hadn't had any painful experiences, and then if we hadn't had an opportunity to overcome those experiences, we might not be able to empathize with other people and we might not be able to hold compassion towards other people. So I think definitely suffering adds depth to our personality. Uh, but then we wouldn't necessarily have to seek suffering. Suffering is not inherently desirable. We definitely have to try to minimize pain and suffering, and it's also our natural instinct to do so. But when sufferings arise, and when we cannot avoid it, we might as well take it as an opportunity for our personal growth and self-discovery. Also, Dr. Frankel found himself only thinking about trivial matters, the cigarettes and soup, and then the cold, and typhus, those really primitive subjects. And then he became really disgusted at his own existence. But then he was able to overcome this frustration by switching a perspective. So he imagined himself into the future, and then he imagined himself being released from this concentration camp and being liberated from this camp. And then he imagined himself in a lecture room and he saw himself teaching students about his experience at the concentration camp. And then at that moment, he was able to find a meaning in life and he was able to carry on. So we can definitely see how we can overcome frustration by shifting a perspective. So I think this mental technique that he introduces here can be very useful for us. So right now we all have to study so much at school and at these private academies, and then there are tons of homework. But then if you could imagine your future self 6 years from now as vividly as possible, as I saw in your vision board, some of you pictured yourself in one of the most prestigious universities in Korea, or some of you pictured yourself in Ivy League schools. And 20 years from now, some of you would be international judges, and some of you would be TV anchors, and some of you would be in 50 years from now, you're going to be Nobel Prize winners. So if you have that ability to mentally picture yourself as vividly as possible, then it can definitely help you rise above the immediate circumstances and then immediate challenges that you face now. You can sort of have this detached attitude um, towards your towards your current troubles. So it shows how profound the power of changing a perspective can be, and by doing so, you can feel a sense of control over your situation. Yeah, so right now there are many trivial things that trouble you, and then you are annoyed by many limitations and your realities. But then if you picture yourself, your future self who had already overcome all of that, you're going to feel more peace in your mind. Yeah, so these are the two lessons that we learned from this part. Okay, thank you so much.